CH8-Talkin' Story in Hawaii. There's an expression in Hawaii that I've heard a lot from my many friends there. When they have to talk to you about something, whether it be serious or just conversation, they say, "Joe, we gotta talk story." People love stories, and one of the really good ways to relate to your prospect is to tell a 19 of 89 story. Just as a picture is worth 1,000 words, a story can be invaluable and often creates an emotional relationship that keeps your prospect riveted and listening. Stories create human interest. In childhood, stories read to us by our parents were the way we fantasized or even saw the world. In short, we've been primed for stories ever since we were very young. Think of the public speaker who starts his speech with a story or uses stories throughout his presentation. It makes for an interesting presentation and often holds the interest of the audience. In fact, very often, after I've been listening to a boring speaker and I start to doze, I wake up when I know a story is about to be told. Stories usually have lessons to teach or experiences to share or even endings that can excite and surprise. And so it is with selling. If you tell a story in your sales presentation that is relevant either to selling your product, creating the environment for selling your product, or getting the prospect involved with your sales presentation, you are using this wonderful and powerful trigger in a very effective way to sell your product or service. Finally, some stories add a unique human element that allows you to relate to and bond very closely with your prospects. Kathy Levine, one of the best television home shopping show hosts and one of QVC's top salespersons, wrote in her book, "It's Better to Laugh." I realized early on that selling is a matter of capturing people's attention and holding it with a good story. The most interesting salespeople I know always have a story to tell. It is their way of relating to their customers and entertaining them as well. One in particular has a repertoire of 1,000 jokes each targeted to his prospect, to the selling environment, and to what he has to sell. As you can imagine, he is very effective. My most successful advertising campaigns all use stories as a basis for my presentation. Let me present one example of this technique from one of my ads. The following paragraphs from an ad I wrote for Blue Blocker sunglasses will give you a flavor of how a story can be very helpful in creating human interest that will cause your prospects to read your entire message. Headline, Vision Breakthrough. Subheadline, when I put on the pair of glasses, what I saw I could not believe. Nor will you. Byline, by Joseph Sugarman. Copy, I am about to tell you a true story. If you believe me, you will be well rewarded. If you don't believe me, I will make it worth your while to change your mind. Let me explain. Len is a friend of mine who knows good products. One day he called excited about a pair of sunglasses he owned. "It's so incredible," he said, "when you first look through a pair, you won't believe it." "What will I see?" I asked. "What could be so incredible?" Len continued, "When you put on these glasses, your vision improves. Objects appear sharper, more defined. Everything takes on an enhanced 3D effect. And it's not my imagination. I just want you to see for yourself." The story continues as I personally look through the sunglasses and learn more about them from Len. It uses a conversational tone, but still covers all the important points about the sunglasses, the danger from the sun, and the danger caused by blue light. A story is used very effectively to build curiosity, and cause the reader to read all the copy, and eventually to 20 of 89 read the final sales pitch. The ad for Blue Blocker sunglasses launched a multi-million-dollar company that eventually sold 20 million pairs of sunglasses. When selling your prospect, think about choosing a few stories that might be of interest to your prospect and assist in the sale of your product. Stories about some of the other people in the industry, stories about a new development and how you discovered it, stories not necessarily about yourself but about subjects that would be of interest to your prospects. If you can deliver a good joke, that might help too. But make sure, first, that you can deliver a joke well, and second, that the joke is in alignment with your prospect, not too off-color, and relevant to the sale if possible. Timing is also important in the storytelling process. It is nice to start with a story, because it holds attention and gets the prospect into the listening mode. Or use stories or jokes throughout the presentation to add variety and rhythm to the presentation. Telling stories is an art form, and using it effectively in a sales presentation grows with experience. Simply being aware of its potential and its effectiveness is a good start. You'll be surprised at how many stories you'll be able to come up with once you put your mind to it. A good story should capture a person's attention, relate the product or service to the sales message, and help you bond with the prospect. And you'll live happily ever after. Trigger 8. Storytelling. CH9- Instilling authority in the men's bathroom. There's always something you can say about your company to establish your authority, size, position, or intention. The consumer loves to do business with experts in a particular area. That's why the trend is away from department stores that sell general merchandise and toward category-specific stores that sell a line of related products. These stores have more expertise, appear more knowledgeable, and have established their authority in a specific category. For example, for years I called my company JS&A, America's largest single source of space-age products. What I was really doing was establishing the authority of JS&A as a major supplier of space-age products. The word single source really meant not only that we concentrated on space-age products, but also that we shipped our products out of a single location. We may not have sold more space-age products than Sears or Radio Shack, but we shipped the most out of a single location and we specialized. Establishing your authority is something that should be done in each sales presentation, regardless of how big or how little you are. For example, America's largest supplier of specialized products for the chimney sweep industry. One of my seminar participants was actually in the chimney sweep industry. Or even if you are the smallest, you can always say, the hardest working bunch of guys in the advertising business. If you really examine your company, you will find something you can say that establishes your authority and expertise in what you are selling. 21 of 89 Then, after you establish your authority, you will be tempted to stop using the phrase that established that authority. After we had run our phrase for almost 6 years, I wondered if we really needed it. But there was always that first-time reader who caught the ad and needed reassurance that she was dealing with an authoritative company in the field in which she was contemplating a purchase. That phrase gave her the confidence. Sometimes it is easy to establish authority just by virtue of the name of the company. American Symbolic Corporation was a company I set up, and which sounded like it was a very big company. Jack and Ed's Video doesn't sound very big at all. Computer Discount Warehouse gives you a pretty good idea of their authority. It has name recognition, plus it tells you what it does through its name: provide computer products at a discount. People naturally respect a knowledgeable authority. Let's say you want to buy a computer. You might first check with the guy in your neighborhood who is known as the local computer genius. Let's call him Danny. He has established his authority and you feel quite comfortable going to Danny to get advice. He'll then tell you what he thinks you should buy and from whom. Chances are he'll recommend some retail outlet that has established itself with some level of authority. It might be the cheapest computer company or maybe the company that provides the best service. You'll seek out the type of company or product that your authority, Danny, has recommended. Let me give you a personal example of something that really points this out. As I was about to walk into a local business supply store in Las Vegas, a young lady came running up to me, asking please, could you help me? I was a little surprised by the suddenness of her approach and, in fact, first thought that there was some kind of emergency. Sure, what's the problem? Almost with tears in her eyes, she looked at me. I'm about to buy a computer and I picked out the one I like the most, but I need somebody to tell me if I've made the right choice. If you know about computers, could you come in the store with me and give me your opinion? I agreed. She wanted me to assume the role of Danny in the example above, so I went into the store with her. The girl explained that she was attending college at UNLV, the University of Nevada at Las Vegas, and that this was her first computer. She needed reassurance from somebody who knew computers that this was a good and wise purchase. She told me how most of the people in the store really didn't know that much about computers. I looked over the computer and, having pretty good knowledge about home computers, told her that she had indeed made a wise choice and that the computer was also a good value. I pointed out some of the technical features that would help her in her schoolwork, and although she didn't have any idea what I was talking about, she felt that she was making the right choice because I said so. Relieved, she thanked me, and then went off to buy her new computer. As she was walking away, she looked over her shoulder and said, I've worked hard for my money and I didn't want to make a stupid mistake. Before you bought a computer, you may have first called somebody like Danny, who was at least a partial expert on computers, to ask for an opinion. You, too, wanted reassurance and confidence about the purchase you were making, that the money you were about to exchange for a computer was going to be spent wisely. The same holds true when you buy anything of value. You just want reassurance. If, however, you can trust the sales organization staff, who themselves are experts, then you won't need any outside expert opinion like Danny, or as the young student needed in the preceding example. It is therefore extremely important that you become an authority on whatever you are selling. 22 of 89. An incident that showed the power of authority happened to me when I was in the Army. I was at the Army's Fleet Libbard Spy School in Baltimore, Maryland, where I was training as an intelligence agent. I slept in a large hall on a bunk bed in typical military style. And the food wasn't that great. But what really griped me the most was the washroom. There was a large washroom with several shower stalls, in front of which were several sinks with mirrors, where you could shave in the morning. At the end of the washroom was a large window and a huge fan that sucked out all the steam from the shower so that the shaving mirrors wouldn't get fogged. My gripe was simple. The fan created such a draft that it was uncomfortably cool while you showered. But if you walked up to the fan and flicked the fan switch off, somebody who was about to shave would just as quickly flick it back on again, because otherwise the mirrors would fog up. I decided to take some action. In my spare time I obtained some poster board and stencils and prepared an official-looking sign, one that looked like a military sign. It read, warning, anybody who touches the fan switch turning it on or off will be subject to court-martial and removal from this school by order of Regulation 141, Subpart 207. Then one quiet afternoon, when nobody was around, I placed the authoritative bright yellow sign with stenciled black letters right next to the fan. The next morning was a cold one. I walked into the large bathroom and went directly to the fan, flipped the switch, and shut off the fan. Those who saw me looked stunned, as if I had just violated a very serious military rule. But even the guys who were shaving would not go over to the fan and turn it on. After all, that would violate Regulation 141, Subpart 207, and they might be kicked out of the program. It was too big a risk, even if this guy Sugarman was crazy enough to do it himself. I took my shower without the cold breeze that I had almost become accustomed to. The shower was warm and comfortable. Finally, I dried myself off, casually walked back to the fan, past all the fogged-up mirrors, and turned the fan back on. In less than a minute, the mirrors were all clear again and my mates, who had been trying to keep their mirrors clean, were relieved. I shaved with a clear mirror, and then walked back to my locker and got dressed. I had used the authority of the military to accomplish a goal and it worked. The authority of the government or some respected legislative body can also be used in the selling process. For example, when referring to my sunglasses while selling on television, I mentioned that blue blockers are under the jurisdiction of the FDA, Food and Drug Administration of the United States government, which they are. All sunglasses are. But this gives a prospective purchaser a degree of confidence in his buying decision. Independent double-blind studies are a form of authority that people can rightfully have confidence in. Authority can also be expressed by title. A medical doctor is more authoritative than a chiropractor. Somebody with a PhD is more authoritative than somebody without one. Authority can be expressed by age or experience. A 60-year-old executive would have a lot more authority than a 24-year-old executive if experience was a major deciding factor. A successful business person has more authority than an average business person. Knowledge is a strong way to express authority. The more you know about your product and your industry, the more effective you'll be before a tough prospect. It is also a proactive way, 23 of 89, to start developing your authority. Even though youngest of salespersons can be taken quite seriously, if what they know is substantial and of benefit to the prospect. Authority can be expressed by dress. Military and police departments use dress to establish authority by the use of insignia and stripes worn to show rank. The higher the rank, the higher the authority. Incidentally, I got away with using that sign for almost a month, but was finally called down to the commanding general's office and asked why I was the only one violating Regulation 141, Subpart 207, of the military regulations. Fortunately, he had a good sense of humor and we all had a good laugh. People love authority and its use in the selling process gives people confidence to make decisions and know they are correct. Trigger 9 Authority CH10- Our president drives a rabbit. Even if you are a multimillionaire, you want to know that you are not being taken advantage of, and, even more importantly, that you are getting value for your financial investment. In my advertising, I always want to convey, through examples or by comparison, that what the customer is buying is a good value. A typical element in one of my ads is where I compare my prices to products with similar features and point out that I'm providing a better value. For example, in an ad I wrote for a pinball game that I was selling for $600, I wanted to justify the purchase by comparing its value not just to a similar product, as there were none on the market in this category, but to other home entertainment products, such as a TV set or a stereo system. By comparing your product with others and proving its value, you are providing the prospect with the logic from which he or she can justify a purchase. One of the techniques that I used a great deal when I was competing against brand-name products was showing value by specific comparisons. The following was a highlighted area of an ad for the $59.95 Data King 800 calculator. America's leading brand-name calculator is the Texas Instruments calculator. T recently announced their new T2550 memory unit for $99.95. That same calculator is now outdated by the introduction of the 800. The T2550 uses rechargeable batteries and has a small display and the older chain memory system. Compare price, features, performance, and dependability, and you can easily see why the Data King is America's greatest memory calculator value. Sometimes I pointed out a cost savings and justified the value with a tongue-in-cheek approach. The following is an ad I wrote for the Olympus Micro Recorder. Headline, endorsement battle subheadline, a famous golf star endorses the Linear. Our unit is endorsed by our president. You'll save $100 as a result. 24 of 89 copy, judge for yourself. The new Olympus Micro Recorder shown above sells for $150. Its closest competition is a $250 recorder called the Linear endorsed by a famous golf star. Fancy endorsement, the famous golf star is a pilot who personally flies his own Citation jet. The Olympus Recorder is endorsed by JSNA's president, who pilots a more cost-efficient single-engine Beechcraft Bonanza. The golf star does not endorse the Linear unit for free. After all, a good portion of his income is derived from endorsing products. Our president, on the other hand, does not get paid for endorsing products just for selling them. And his Bonanza is not as expensive to fly as the golf star Citation. In fact, our president also drives a Volkswagen Rabbit. I then continued to show how inefficiently the Linear was sold through a direct selling organization, and how efficiently the Olympus was sold via direct marketing and through my company, JSNA. The conclusion, savings of $100 for an even better product, all because our product wasn't endorsed by an expensive spokesperson nor sold by a direct selling organization. Simply educating the reader to the intrinsic value of your product is equivalent to lowering its price, or at a minimum providing greater value. In short, there is a value associated with the education you are providing your prospect, and your prospect will be willing to pay more as a result. This is as true in personal selling as it is for a mail-order ad. There will always be a question in the mind of the consumer, am I buying the product at the best price? Once again, you must first bring up the question, and then resolve it with your price comparison or price information, or you are not communicating effectively with your prospect. If I were selling my home, I would point to the extra quality features that I had put into it, the oversized commercial drain in the shower, the additional power outlets I had installed. In short, I'd show value by virtue of all the work in the home that isn't apparent to a casual observer. I would educate my prospect. No matter what I was selling, I'd express proof that I was providing real value to the prospect, and that I was providing more than anybody else. In short, it is up to me to visibly demonstrate, by example, that the product I am offering will, in the long haul, give more value than any other choice possible. Period. There is one more aspect of the value trigger that is very important in the selling process. When I am selling in print, I have noticed that when I offer two versions of a product, it is best to offer the less expensive model first or as your featured item. For example, if I were offering a blood pressure unit, I would offer my $99.95 version as the main item I am offering. Then I would offer the $149.95 deluxe unit as an alternative. The prospect would often, depending on the nature of the product, be attracted by the lower price but then by the deluxe version. Nevertheless, when I've asked my customers who bought the more expensive unit what they bought, they often told me that they bought the $99.95 blood pressure unit, not the deluxe version. In short, the lower price point seems to be stamped in their minds as the one they bought, even though they actually bought the more expensive unit. In the desire to get value and the lowest possible price, the prospect completely ignores reality to satisfy the ego needs of getting the best possible price and value. The lower price point also seems to attract the prospect's interest. Then, once the prospect gets involved in reading the sales copy, he or she can be sold on the more expensive model. More total 25 of 89 readers are attracted by putting in a lower price point, so more sales are generated. In the personal selling scenario, there is a different approach to use. In your retail advertising, I would offer only the lower priced product to attract potential shoppers. Then, once the shopper was in the store, I would pitch the more expensive product first, to get the prospect eventually to see the lower priced model as a greater value. For example, if I were offering two versions of the blood pressure unit, I'd offer the more expensive $149.95 model first. Then, shortly thereafter, when I present the less expensive $99.95 model, it will seem considerably cheaper than if I had just presented it in the first place. In short, you can take a $99.95 product that was perceived as being expensive simply by presenting a similar product at $149.95 first. The $99.95 product suddenly seems like it is indeed a bargain. This technique is often used in personal selling. I know. I've been offered the opportunity to participate in some major sporting event as a sponsor. I would be offered the most expensive sponsorship package they had. Then, when I hesitated, the salesman was prepared with a much less expensive package that seemed like a bargain compared to the original one. And I ended up buying the less expensive package. Had the less expensive version been offered first, I probably would have thought twice about that package as well. But the order in which a value is presented definitely plays a major role in how we respond to the offer. I've seen this technique used often in fundraising. An effective fundraiser will ask for an outrageous amount and then continue to drop the request until it seems like a bargain, even though it would have seemed expensive had the bargain been presented first. When you justify the price of your product or service, you add value to your offer and give the prospect one more logical reason to buy. Trigger 10 Proof of value.